All right, guys, welcome to another video. So I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in there on one of the hot topics recently in gaming, and that is to do with digital media. Sony especially has been in the spotlight recently over a couple of major events. The first is that they have revoked people's access to content that they have paid for on the Discovery Network. So yeah, you bought it, you thought you could use it forever. That's not the case. Sony have decided, because the licensing agreement has changed with Sony and Discovery, that means that you can no longer access stuff that you have paid for from Discovery via Sony. So yeah, that sucks. And this is about the fact that, digital content is not owned by the consumer. You do not own the stuff that you have paid for when it is digital only. And it's a big problem, really. It's a big shift in the industry. We grew up, people of a certain age grew up with physical media, and it was a much more robust system of ownership. And for many different reasons, not only because the content actually had to be finished before it was released and put out on those physical medias, because there was no such thing as updates and patches. So the game actually had to be finished. There was a bit more quality control back in the day. But you owned that content. When you bought a cartridge, when you bought a disc, you own that media. You can do with it as you please. You can lend it to your friend, which is good for business, because you lend a game to a friend, they get a taste for it, and then they give it back to you, and they're more likely to buy it themselves, perhaps. Or you can sell it on after you've finished with it to fund further purchases for yourself. So yeah, physical media is quite obvious. You own that, it is yours. Digital media, it's really more akin to a rental. All of the games that you buy, all of the digital media, music, videos, whatever that you buy digital only, it's essentially a rental, because you are beholden to an external source, whether or not you can continue accessing it in the future. Some of these things you might have access to for a very long time, but it comes down to the fact that the final decision of whether or not you get to keep that is not yours, right? So we'll expand on that a bit more in a little bit. But the second thing that happened recently that was a bit of a red flag when it comes to digital content is the fact that Sony, it's seemingly accidentally, shut down a load of people's PSN accounts. So, there's some kind of administrative error, maybe. Pretty fucking big one, though. And they weren't apologetic about it. They didn't make any acknowledgement of this. They have worked since then to reverse those account closures and get people their access back. But it's a stark reminder of the fragility of your consumer rights when it comes to digital media. That it can be taken away from you at any time for any reason, and that might sound like an overstatement, but as others have said before, those really, really long, like stupidly long license user agreements that you're asked to click OK to confirm that you've read it, because yeah, people obviously read those things. Hidden in those reams of pages of writing that you're supposed to read before you buy things and click on things and agree to things is a stipulation that they can change the terms of service whenever they feel like, to whatever they feel like, for whatever reason they feel like. Okay, so it's a slippery slope, is what it is. And it's something that, like I said, gamers of a certain age have been worried about for quite a long time. I've been a collector for a very long time, and not just for the fun of having the collections, but in the confidence that I will have access to a library of games that I love for the rest of my life, essentially. When I was collecting retro games, I don't so much collect that now, but I still have a good sized retro collection. And it is awesome to know that my retirement is sorted, that I have got hundreds of games that I still haven't played to get to, but they're there waiting for me. And it is a library of opportunity, a library of choice that I have bought, that is mine, that I keep forever, that I can do as I please, and it's always there for me. And that's not the case with digital media. And you may have some examples of this in your own digital library of games that you bought that now no longer work. Whether it's, this happens most often with games that are multiplayer only, of course. So online only games, that's a slight different argument there, of course, because online only games, you buy that with the knowledge that these games are only going to be good for as long as there's people playing them. So as long as there's an active player base and active servers. But it's related to this issue of sorry, my cat's climbing on the table. Let me say, say hello, Trev. This is Trevor. Trev. Yeah. But other games do that too. There have been other games that aren't just online only that have been pulled from the store for a variety of reasons, and you can't download it again then. If you've taken it off your console, you can't download it again once it's disappeared from the store, online store. And but this is a trend that is starting to gather pace, and it's a little bit worrying. We have seen recently a very, very high profile, much anticipated AAA game, Alan Wake 2, has come out, and it is digital only. I fucking loved Alan Wake 1. I was really looking forward to Alan Wake 2, and I hadn't been following. I don't know if this was announced like a long time ago that it was going to be digital only at launch. Hopefully that's a temporary arrangement and it's some kind of exclusivity deal that will expire and they'll bring out a disc version. But as it stands, I'm boycotting Alan Wake 2. I'm not getting that shit digital only. I want it on disc. I want to own the game. I found this new coffee flavoured stout in Tesco. It's gorgeous. But it's a worrying trend. Of course, we've seen Sony and Microsoft, the two of the main console manufacturers, try to push us towards digital only. They really, really, really tried to do that. In the last two generations, they've put out digital only versions of their consoles, or at least Microsoft did. Certainly in this generation, they've done that. Was there a digital only PS4? I can't remember. I don't think there was. But certainly this generation, and that was a conversation that was being had last generation. So they've been trying to do this across two generations. They've certainly moved further in that direction now because you've got a PS5 digital only version and an Xbox Series digital only version. Okay, so this is, in an ideal world, they would prefer that to be how we game, because of course then you are entirely beholden to their whim. There's no such thing as a second-hand market then, of course. From a corporation's point of view, of course they want to do away with physical media because then there's no second-hand market. They don't lose any sales to people selling their own stuff on eBay or back to shops or whatever it is. And they want to go in that direction. And they're really just waiting for the technology to catch up to make it so that they can do that without losing too much. Because at the minute, of course, you've still got, rural areas that don't have great internet connections that still account for a certain percentage of the market, that it's not viable really to be downloading games of 60, 70 gig, whatever they are these days. I don't pay attention, but huge games, basically, huge downloads. In rural areas, that's a problem. So physical media is important for certain geographical reasons, as well as, consumer rights reasons. But it's something that we should be concerned about. And I try and buy physical as often as I can, where I can. Okay, I'm in a conflicted kind of position at the minute because my favorite way of gaming recently has been VR. I'm absolutely obsessed with virtual reality gaming. It's completely taken over my gaming life over the last 7 years since PSVR 1 came out, and unfortunately, the majority of VR games are not getting disc releases for a number of reasons. It's the VR catalog of games is still mainly independent studios, small studios, and a lot of the time it's smaller games as well. So sort of bite-sized games, not as long, obviously much smaller budgets, made by much smaller teams with much less money to spend. They have so there are legitimate logistical reasons why a lot of these games aren't coming out on VR on disc. And I understand that. And because I understand that, again, I don't want to miss out on these amazing experiences. I have been buying a lot of digital games recently, but it sticks in my craw. It really does. Because, whilst I've had a fantastic time with the games themselves, there is a timer on my collection of games that I'm not in control of. So at some point in the future, my access to those games will be revoked. There is a timer on them. We're counting down the clock now for when access to PS3 digital content will stop. They tried to do this recently, and there was a big backlash. So that day would have already come had there not been a big consumer backlash against Sony for planning to do that, to revoke and basically cease access to digital content. That means patches and updates and things like that, and digital downloads for PS3 content. As it stands, I believe you can still access those stuff, but there is a timer on that generation, and it will end at some point. Those downloads, those servers will not be supported in perpetuity. And there is a timer just like that for every single generation. And it's going to get worse and worse in the future because, again, we are moving further and further into this reliance on digital content. And it's a problem, really. If you value your ability to maintain access to things that you've bought, which was the standard concept for me growing up, in the era of physical media, that's just, you didn't even think about the fact that, oh, one day I'm not going to be able to play this thing that I've already paid for. Unless you sell it, of course, which is totally different. But yeah, so it's there's a couple of stark reminders recently of that situation that we're in, that Sony have kind of provided us with, and I love Sony for the games that they give us and the technology that they give us, and it's not a Sony specific problem. This is an entertainment media wide direction of travel that they are trying to take us in, because it means they can make more money. That's bottom line, of course. So there it is. It's just a little rant on this situation. There's a lot more to be said on it. And I'm sure there's some other things that I forgot to mention in this vid, but that's it. I just wanted to get this on video for prosperity, to kind of talk about that. And really, I guess the useful thing to take from it is really that we can theoretically, in theory, we can fight back against this. We can make decisions as consumers that encourage these corporations to keep providing us with physical media, to keep to not further hack away our rights. And that is by choosing to buy games physically where it is feasible to do so. So everybody that, in fact, we already had some victories here. Again, we have slowed the curve somewhat because of the fact that the majority of people who bought a PS5 bought the physical version with the disc drive. And I believe that's the same for the Xbox. The majority of people bought the one that you can use discs with. And, so these consumer choices make a difference. And whilst it's not really realistic to kind of, legally fight these companies in court when it comes to things like taking away content or reducing consumer rights, people don't have the money, time, or expertise to take these things to court. You can certainly make choices as a consumer that contribute to maintaining these rights as they are. But there's other issues, of course, mixed in with it. It's kind of sign of the times recently. Because there is this ability now for studios to put out patches post-release. It's they are able to put out unfinished games, and it's you are in a situation now where, theoretically speaking, in 20 years' time, if somebody buys a PS5 and fancies downloading or rather acquiring discs of a lot of the games, theoretically, if those patches that fix those broken games are not still available, you're going to have a library full of games that have issues. But that's another aspect of this digital content dilemma that we are in. You know, I would be less concerned about this if you were able to lend and sell your digital content. That would give it some closer parity to the consumer rights that we enjoyed for the last several decades, growing up with physical media. It wouldn't solve all the problems, but it would bring us into closer parity with what we've taken for granted all this time. But yeah, so just a couple of big red flags there recently, and a reminder that it is worth trying to preserve our consumer rights, and in doing so, or to do so, rather, by making choices that allow us to show these companies what we prioritize and what's important to us, and that is, yeah, actually owning the stuff that you pay for, rather than just renting it. And again, with PSVR, like, absolutely love it. And so I have been guilty of, sometimes being too excited about a new release and then not waiting, and then several months later, a game comes out on disc, and I've kicked myself. I feel, oh, fuck it. Bought several games, like there's Crossfire Sierra Squad, Hubris. There's a few others where they don't get announced that they're going to get a disc release at launch. So you buy it because you think, I'm definitely going to enjoy that game. And then several months later, it comes out on disc. That stings. But to offset that disappointment, I've been trying to wait. I've been at least trying to wait until sales happen. So at least I'm reduced. But the thing with that is, so I wait till a sale happens to buy these digital only games on VR. But I would be quite happy to support these developers by paying the full price for these games if I was able to actually own the game on a disc. So it's a shame that a lot of the time, they don't get announced as having a physical version until several months later. Ironically, when the game's sold well, studios will then decide, let's put a disc version out. Which is kind of ironic, isn't it? Because if you've already sold well, you potentially already sold to them at that time, at least the majority of the market that was there at that time, then you put it out on disc. I don't understand these decisions that they make, but that's it. At the risk of being redundant and repeating myself, I'll stop here. But that's it. All right, guys. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.